Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're tackling a massive geographical mystery, Australia's vast, empty center. When we picture Australia, we almost immediately think of the Outback, the red dirt, the endless horizons. But where Aussies actually live, well, that's a totally different story. And it's a fascinating lesson in how nature absolutely dictates human settlement. Get a load of this statistic. Nearly 90% of Australia's population lives within roughly 50 kilometers of the coastline. 90%! Think about that for a second. You basically have an entire nation's population crammed onto a tiny coastal strip, so thin you could drive right across it in under an hour. It's a total paradox, right? Australia is the world's sixth largest country by landmass. It is a literal geographical titan, but it's kind of hollowed out. That vast interior is actually one of the most sparsely populated regions on the entire planet. So obviously the million-dollar question is, with all that incredible free space, why do Australians cling to the edges instead of expanding inward? It isn't just because they love a good beach day. There's a much, much deeper mechanism at work here. Section 1. The land before people. To really understand this, we have to rewind the clock millions of years. Australia's continental isolation and the massive tectonic rise of the Great Dividing Range basically rigged the game from the start. Over thousands of years, these ancient geological shifts literally baked the interior, creating those massive, unforgiving deserts we know today. It created this stark, permanent physical divide. Think of the Great Dividing Range like a giant ancient wall running along the eastern coast. It traps all the precious moisture on that narrow coastal strip, leaving the interior basins totally starved of rain. It's a textbook rain shadow effect. But was ancient geology the only thing keeping the interior so empty? Well, no. While the rain shadow explains the dry dirt, it leads us straight to the next huge piece of the puzzle. It's the one resource that literally dictates the rise and fall of every human civilization. Section 2. The dictatorship of water. The scarcity of fresh water inland compared to those lush coasts is just extreme. While the coastal catchments capture reliable, heavy rainfall, the interior is heavily reliant on the Murray-Darling Basin and ancient, hidden groundwater. There just aren't massive, reliable river systems crisscrossing the center of the country. And the water that does exist inland, well, it's incredibly unpredictable. Thanks to totally erratic drought cycles and wild climate swings, water, not land, became Australia's ultimate bottleneck. Because let's face it, you could have all the free acreage in the world, but if you can't guarantee a reliable drink of water, you simply can't build a city. So the physical and climatic traps were set by nature eons ago. But how did the first British settlers react to this harsh reality when they actually showed up on these shores? They had to make snap survival decisions that would ultimately map the future of a whole nation. Section 3. The colonial coastal imprint. Early colonists were basically forced to follow a super strict survival blueprint. Step 1, find a safe harbor. Step 2, secure a reliable freshwater source right nearby. Step 3, build a shipping port to actually receive your supplies. And finally, connect to maritime trade routes. This exact formula is why modern megahubs like Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, and Perth all began as strategic coastal ports. Venturing inland back then was a complete logistical nightmare. We're talking a brutal, impassable landscape with zero navigable rivers. So establishing strong ports for imports, exports, and maritime logistics wasn't just, good economics for these colonies. It was literally a matter of survival. But that brings up a really fascinating curiosity. How did these tiny, isolated colonial outposts, built literally just to survive on the edge of a harsh continent, explode into the absolute economic powerhouses they are today? Section 4. Building the modern economy. It's all about how the wealth actually flows. Agriculture and mining happen deep out in the remote interior, extracting immense, mind-boggling value from the land. But and here's the kicker, all the transportation, processing, manufacturing, and international trade infrastructure funnels that economic energy straight back to the coastal cities. Basically, the interior does the heavy lifting, but the coast cashes the check. Section 5. Life in the Outback. So while those coastal engines roar with activity and massive populations, living inland is uniquely difficult. It requires just unbelievable resilience from remote indigenous communities and mining towns. They have to rely on essential remote networks like the famous Royal Flying Doctor Service just to survive the sheer isolation. Add in the astronomical cost of running power lines and roads over thousands of empty miles, and you guarantee the population density stays incredibly low. With all this geological, climatic, and economic history stacked entirely against the interior, we've got to ask a very modern question. Will the crises of the 21st century eventually force Australians away from the comfortable edges and back into the center? Section 6. Australia of Today. Because today, those historical coastal cities are absolutely bursting. They're groaning under the weight of severe housing crises, explosive urban growth, and high immigration. Plus, the coastal fringes are dealing with escalating climate change impacts. Think way more frequent bushfires and extreme heat waves. Because of all this pressure, urban planners are actually starting to look inland again, eyeing those vast empty spaces for massive renewable energy projects and potential new infrastructure. And that brings us to the core takeaway of today's explainer. The fact that 90% of the population lives on the coast isn't just some cultural preference for surfing and ocean views. It is an absolute masterclass in geographical and historical determinism. People don't simply choose where to live. Nature chooses first. As climate change alters our world and really strains our coastal cities, I'll leave you with this final thought. We've seen how millions of years of geology drew the current map of Australia. But how will nature rewrite the map of human settlement in the centuries to come? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the world around you.
Thanks for watching World Decoded. Make sure to like and share, subscribe, and stay curious.